2026 is the year the Titans return to absolutely shatter the throne they never truly left. The music landscape thought it had evolved. Rookies thought they conquered the charts. But suddenly, the atmosphere completely shifted. 7 legends walked back into the spotlight, and the entire industry held its breath. Are we just witnessing a nostalgic reunion, or is this a meticulously calculated global takeover? How did they effortlessly destroy records deemed unbreakable? And why is the rest of the industry scrambling to survive in their shadow? Get ready to uncover the chilling truth behind the madness as we dive deep into more than just a comeback. 7 insane reasons BTS is burying the rest of K-pop in 2026.
Number 7. RM, the mastermind's grand chess strategy, unleashed. When the world thought K-pop had permanently transitioned into bite-sized, 15-second TikTok trends with easily digestible hooks and flashy but ultimately empty concepts, the leader of the biggest group on the planet was silently watching from the sidelines, meticulously drafting a blueprint that would entirely rewrite the industry's DNA upon his return in 2026. Did you honestly believe Kim Namjoon, the man with an IQ of 148 who casually quotes philosophical literature in global press conferences, was merely biding his time during his military service and solo endeavors? The reality is far more terrifying for the competition. He was observing the structural weaknesses of the very industry BTS built, noting how the soul had been stripped away in favor of algorithmic virality and preparing an artistic nuclear launch that would redefine the global music landscape forever. Let's rewind for a second and look at the sheer weight of his solo projects, from the deeply reflective Indigo to the jarring avant-garde brilliance of Right Place, Wrong Person, where RM completely abandoned the typical idol formula to embrace raw, unfiltered human vulnerability, collaborating with legendary indie artists and focusing on the deep, sometimes painful complexities of adulthood, displacement, and identity. He wasn't just making music, he was conditioning the global audience to expect a standard of lyrical genius that no rookie group or established rival could ever hope to replicate. Now, in 2026, he has brought that devastatingly high standard back into the core dynamic of BTS, completely obliterating the manufactured plastic feel of current K-pop trends. The 2026 comeback isn't just a collection of catchy pop songs. It is a profound, almost cinematic sociological commentary spearheaded by RM's poetic pen, tackling themes of post-pandemic alienation, the crushing weight of digital hyperconnectivity, and the bittersweet reality of growing older in a world that demands eternal youth. While other groups are desperately fighting for a fleeting moment on the Billboard Hot 100 with repetitive choruses and manufactured dance challenges, RM has elevated BTS to the status of global cultural philosophers, securing partnerships with global art institutions and museums that treat their new album not as a commercial product, but as a significant piece of contemporary art. Look at the facts. Under his leadership in this explosive year, they aren't just booking stadiums, they are curating immersive citywide cultural festivals where the music is intrinsically tied to literature, visual arts, and global charity initiatives, a logistical nightmare that only a leader with his unprecedented global respect and diplomatic finesse, remember his history-making UN speeches and White House visits, could possibly orchestrate. He has effectively weaponized his intellectual capital, making it blatantly obvious that while the rest of the industry is playing a frantic game of checkers to stay relevant, Kim Namjoon has been playing 4D chess all along. The sheer depth of his songwriting in this new era forces listeners to confront their own reflections, moving far beyond the superficial parasocial relationships that most companies rely on to sell merchandise. He has transformed the fandom into a global think tank, a philosophical movement that actively engages in dissecting his intricate metaphors and cultural references, creating a massive, impenetrable wall of loyalty that no trending dance challenge or viral gimmick can breach. How do you even begin to compete with a group whose leader dictates the cultural zeitgeist rather than chasing it?
You simply can't, because RM has redefined what it means to be a global artist in 2026, leaving the rest of the K-pop industry looking like they are still stuck in a high school talent show, while he is delivering a masterclass at Oxford. Every single interview he gives now is a testament to this evolution. He speaks with the quiet, terrifying confidence of a man who knows he has checkmated the entire industry, casually dropping profound insights about the nature of artistry that immediately go viral, not because they are memeable, but because they are undeniably universally true. This isn't just leadership, it is absolute, unquestionable dominance wrapped in the humble demeanor of a poet who prefers visiting quiet art galleries over attending flashy celebrity afterparties. The contrast is staggering, and it highlights exactly why the industry was suffocating in their absence. They lacked the philosophical anchor that Namjoon provides, the grounding force that reminds the world that K-pop can actually mean something profound. As we witness the sheer scale of the 2026 World Tour, a masterfully crafted narrative arc that feels more like a traveling theatrical epic than a standard concert, it becomes painstakingly clear that RM didn't just bring his members back together, he brought them back as untouchable titans of art. He took the collective anxiety, the immense pressure of their unparalleled legacy, and the individual growth they all experienced during their hiatus, and forged it into an indestructible diamond of an album concept that leaves critics absolutely speechless and competitors scrambling to desperately hire better writers. But the truth is, you can't hire a Kim Namjoon. You can't manufacture the kind of brilliant, empathetic, and ruthlessly perceptive mind that orchestrated the greatest comeback in the history of music, effectively turning the rest of K-pop into mere background noise. He has seamlessly integrated his passion for nature, art, and philosophy into the very fabric of their 2026 promotions, ensuring that every music video, every concept photo, and every lyric serves a higher purpose, challenging the listeners to look within themselves rather than just mindlessly consuming content. This level of artistic integrity is completely foreign to an industry obsessed with fast fashion and faster music, and it is precisely why BTS is burying the competition without even breaking a sweat. RM has proven that longevity in this brutal industry doesn't come from chasing youth or following trends. It comes from undeniable authenticity and a relentless pursuit of artistic growth. The magnitude of his vision extends far beyond just music. It bleeds into the way the global media is now forced to interact with them. Journalists who used to ask trivial questions about their favorite colors or dating rumors are now compelled to prepare for deep dive interviews discussing the socio-economic impacts of their lyrics and the existential themes embedded in their visual storytelling. RM has fundamentally changed the rules of engagement. He has made it clear that BTS in 2026 is not here to entertain you with superficial distractions. They are here to challenge your worldview, provoke thought, and offer genuine solace in an increasingly chaotic world. This strategic pivot from pop idols to global cultural icons is a masterstroke that effectively renders the traditional K-pop playbook completely obsolete. While other agencies are desperately trying to clone the success of the past, churning out perfectly synchronized groups with identical concepts, RM is standing at the helm of a completely different ship, navigating waters that no other artist has ever dared to explore. His ability to synthesize complex emotions and universal truths has become the ultimate weapon in this 2026 comeback, creating a gravitational pull so strong that it is effortlessly absorbing the attention, respect, and devotion of not just their massive fan base, but the general public worldwide. The absolute sheer scale of his intellect and emotional intelligence is the very reason why the phrase BTS paved the way is no longer just
a fan chant. It is an undeniable historical fact that is currently unfolding before our very eyes, leaving any lingering doubts and leaving the rest of the K-pop industry choking on the dust of their meteoric, unstoppable resurgence. So, as the world stands in awe of the sheer magnitude of RM's strategic brilliance, watching him effortlessly guide BTS back to the absolute summit of the global music industry, the terrifying question remains for everyone else trying to keep up. If this is merely the intellectual foundation RM has laid down for their monumental return, what kind of unimaginable, earth-shattering artistic heights are they going to reach when the rest of the members unleash their own hidden arsenals in this relentless 2026 takeover?
Number 6. Jin, the silver voice that defied time and gravity unleashed. Did you honestly believe for a single second that Kim Sek-jin, the man universally dubbed worldwide handsome, was merely going to rely on his unparalleled visuals when BTS made their catastrophic, industry-shattering return in 2026? If you did, you haven't been paying attention to the most dramatic, slow-burn artistic evolution in the history of modern music, because what Jin brought to the table this year has absolutely terrified every single vocal coach and competitor in the K-pop sphere. Let's rewind and look at the sheer psychological weight this man carried. As the eldest, he was the first to face the daunting reality of military enlistment, the first to step away from the blinding lights, and the first to return to a completely shifted landscape back in 2024, tasked with holding the absolute emotional fort of the fandom while his brothers served their time. He didn't just wait around, he meticulously sharpened his skills, transitioning from the group's bright pop anchor to a devastatingly powerful balladeer and rock-infused vocalist, planting the seeds with his masterpiece, The Astronaut, co-written with Coldplay, which proved he could command the global stage entirely on his own. Now, in the monumental 2026 reunion, Jin has completely weaponized his silver voice, turning it into an instrument of raw, undeniable emotional warfare that slices right through the heavily auto-tuned, digitally processed noise that has tragically become the standard for 4th and 5th generation idol groups. While rookies are out there desperately panting through complex choreography with pre-recorded backing tracks turned all the way up, Jin is standing dead center in sold-out mega stadiums with nothing but a microphone, delivering crystal clear, ear-shattering high notes and breathtaking falsettos that practically bend the fabric of reality and leave tens of thousands of people in absolute weeping silence. You have to understand the unprecedented level of vocal stability and breath control this requires. He is performing grueling 3-hour sets, executing intense choreography, and yet his live vocals are so terrifyingly perfect that critics are genuinely accusing the group of eating their CDs, only for Jin to casually flip the narrative by changing a melody mid-song just to prove his mic is on and blazing hot. But it's not just about hitting the high notes, it is about the agonizingly beautiful emotional depth he injects into every single syllable, a maturity born from years of immense pressure, silent struggles, and the profound realization of his own self-worth. Themes he so brilliantly explored in his past solos like Awake and Epiphany, which have now fully matured into his 2026 persona. He has finally, spectacularly unleashed the full potential of his acting degree from Jungkook University, seamlessly blending his world-class theatrical abilities with his musical performances to create a cinematic universe within the album's concept that feels more like an Oscar-winning drama than a standard K-pop music video. In 2026, he isn't just singing the lyrics, he is living them, bleeding them, and using his intensely expressive eyes to tell 1,000 untold stories of longing, brotherhood, and triumph, entirely redefining what it means to be a visual center in a boy group. The K-pop industry is notorious for treating older idols as obsolete, forcefully pushing them into the background to make way for younger, more malleable trainees. But Jin has completely shattered that ageist paradigm, proving that real artistry, devastating charisma, and vocal mastery only grow more lethal with age. He has single-handedly made the industry realize that you cannot manufacture the soul-piercing resonance of a man who has lived through the absolute highest peaks of global fame, survived the grueling isolation of military service, and returned not with arrogance, but with a grounded, terrifying confidence that completely eclipses the flashy, superficial gimmicks of his juniors. Consider the sheer impact of his stage presence. He effortlessly pivots from being the warm, humorous Hyung who diffuses the group's tension behind the scenes to an absolute vocal titan on stage who commands the attention of millions with a single, trembling breath. A duality that creates a hypnotic, almost addictive magnetism for the audience. The 2026 BTS album features tracks specifically tailored to let his rock tenor register soar, creating anthemic, stadium-shaking moments that are scientifically impossible for an average pop group to replicate without sounding incredibly hollow. He has effectively forced the industry to remember what real, unadulterated live singing sounds like, creating a devastating standard that is currently burying every single group relying on perfectly synchronized dancing to hide their vocal inadequacies. How do you even begin to challenge an artist who can make a stadium of 90,000 people hold their breath just by closing his eyes and belting a note that seems to reach the actual heavens? You can't, and that is precisely why the rest of the industry is drowning in the wake of his silver-voiced tsunami. Jin's 2026 era is the ultimate triumphant middle finger to every critic who ever dared to reduce him to just a pretty face in their early debut days, showcasing a monumental growth trajectory that is as inspiring as it is absolutely intimidating. He has cemented himself not just as a foundational pillar of BTS's sound, but as an irreplaceable generational vocal powerhouse who is dictating the emotional pulse of the entire global music scene. As the final echoes of his high notes ring out across the world, shattering records and redefining live performance standards, the chilling reality sets in for every other entertainment agency. If this is the level of earth-shattering power the eldest member is casually unleashing, what kind of absolute, inescapable destruction is waiting when the group's underground rap legends step up to the mic to completely burn the system to the ground?
Number 5. Suga, the unforgiving architect of truth, setting the industry ablaze. Have you ever stopped to wonder what actually happens when a sleeping dragon is violently awoken after years of quiet, calculating observation in the shadows of the music industry? What occurs when the very foundations of perfectly manufactured, sugary sweet idol pop are suddenly struck by a raw, unapologetic earthquake of pure, unadulterated hip-hop authenticity? Can the current hyper-sanitized generation of K-pop even begin to handle the brutal honesty of a man who has literally bled his soul onto the track, turning his deepest, darkest traumas into multi-platinum global anthems? Enter Min Yoongi, the genius producer known to the world as Sugar, and the ruthless underground king known as August D, who has returned in 2026 not just to participate in a comeback, but to execute a hostile lyrical takeover of an industry that has grown far too comfortable in its artificiality. If you thought his devastating solo world tour for D-Day back in 2023 was the peak of his artistic rage and liberation, you were entirely mistaken. That was merely the warm-up act, a global warning shot proving he could casually sell out massive arenas worldwide completely on his own, armed with nothing but a microphone, a guitar, and a glass of whiskey, while other groups struggle to fill theaters even with all their members present. Now he has taken that immense, undeniable solo gravity and violently fused it back into the core identity of BTS, completely obliterating the line between idol music and legendary hip-hop craftsmanship. You have to look back at the agonizing journey of this man to understand the sheer, terrifying weight of his 2026 presence. We are talking about a kid from Daegu who used to sell his beats for mere pennies just to buy a bowl of noodles. A teenager who completely shattered his shoulder working as a delivery boy to chase a dream that everyone told him was impossible, battling severe depression and anxiety in the claustrophobic basement studios of a then bankrupt Big Hit Entertainment. Every single scar, every tear, and every drop of sweat from those grueling years has been alchemized into a lethal musical weapon. In 2026, while rookie groups are being handed pre-packaged, committee-written songs engineered solely to go viral on TikTok for 15 seconds, Suga is locked in his genius lab, producing sprawling, deeply complex masterpieces that seamlessly blend traditional Korean instruments like the hagam with aggressive, distorted trap beats, creating a cinematic soundscape that feels more like a revolutionary war cry than a pop song. He is single-handedly exposing the blatant hypocrisy of the current K-pop scene. The industry is currently saturated with artists pretending to be tough and edgy, but Yoongi actually lived it, survived it, and is now looking down from the absolute summit with a cold, unforgiving gaze. His verses on this new 2026 album aren't just lyrics, they are surgical strikes against the toxic media landscape, the suffocating pressure of societal expectations, and the isolating, terrifying reality of being at the very top of the world, where the air is incredibly thin. He raps with a guttural, desperate aggression that completely shatters the illusion of the perfectly polished, perpetually smiling idol, forcing the listener to confront the ugly, painful truths of human existence that most entertainment companies explicitly forbid their artists from ever mentioning. Consider the staggering level of respect he commands, not just from fans, but from the entire global music industry. This is the same mastermind who produced chart-topping hits for legends like IU, Psy, and Halsey, effectively becoming an untouchable kingmaker in the industry. Yet he saves his most devastating, soul-bearing productions for BTS. When he steps onto the stage in this monumental comeback tour, the entire atmosphere violently shifts. The bright lights dim, the screaming transforms into a reverent roar, and he delivers his verses with a casual, terrifying swagger that completely devours the stage, proving the true charisma isn't about perfectly synchronized dance moves or forced fan service, but about the raw, magnetic power of absolute authenticity. He has brought the unapologetic middle-finger-raising energy of his August D persona into the group's dynamic, essentially daring the rest of the industry to step up and challenge their artistic supremacy. But how can they? How do you compete with a man who has already conquered his inner demons and put them on public display in songs like Amygdala and The Last, and has now emerged on the other side as a fiercely protective, incredibly wise musical architect who dictates the sonic direction of the biggest band in history? You simply cannot. The sheer depth of his musical knowledge, his ability to seamlessly transition from heart-wrenching piano-driven ballads to blistering rapid-fire rap verses without missing a single breath, creates a standard of excellence that is currently suffocating the competition. Suga doesn't just make music, he builds sonic fortresses that protect the legacy of BTS while simultaneously launching devastating artillery strikes against the mediocrity of the current musical landscape. He has proven that you don't need to chase fleeting trends when you have the power to create timeless, deeply impactful art that resonates with millions of people on a profoundly cellular level. The K-pop industry is currently shaking because they realize they can't manufacture the kind of battle-tested, blood-stained genius that Min Yoongi possesses. It has to be earned through years of agonizing struggle and unyielding passion. So, as we watch Suga effortlessly burn down the artificial constraints of the idol world, leaving a trail of shattered streaming records and awestruck critics in his wake, we are forced to ask ourselves a genuinely terrifying question. If the group's lead producer is bringing this level of devastating, unapologetic fire to the 2026 reunion, what absolute blinding radiance is going to completely overshadow the industry when the group's undisputed dance commander and literal ray of sunshine decides it is finally time to take over the stage?
Number 4. J-Hope, the ruthless commander of the stage, shattering the illusion. Did you really think Jungkook was just going to come back from his grueling military service as a special class warrior and settle for the watered-down, incredibly simplified dance routines that are currently plaguing the K-pop landscape? If you did, you are completely underestimating the terrifying evolution of a man who single-handedly headlined Lollapalooza back in 2022, effectively turning a massive American rock festival into his own personal playground known as Hobbypalooza, and making history as the very first South Korean artist to ever command a main stage of that magnitude entirely on his own. We are talking about the undisputed, terrifyingly strict dance captain of BTS, a man who has always been the absolute backbone of their legendary live performances, the very core reason why 7 distinctly different individuals can move as a single, breathing, unstoppable entity on stage. But in 2026, he hasn't just returned as a dancer, he has returned as a master choreographer who spent his time in the military not just serving, but leading as an elite drill instructor, instilling absolute, uncompromising discipline into hundreds of recruits, and he has now brought that exact same relentless, militant precision straight back into the big hit practice rooms. You have to understand the sheer panic this induces in the rest of the industry. While current 4th and 5th generation idol groups are heavily focused on creating easily digestible 15-second TikTok dance challenges with highly repetitive and simplistic hand gestures designed solely for algorithmic virality, J-Hope is orchestrating massive, sprawling, brutally complex stage formations that require the cardiovascular endurance of an Olympic athlete and the flawless timing of a metronome. Let's take a brutal look at his recent solo project, Hope on the Street, where he completely stripped away the flashy idol aesthetic and traveled the globe to reconnect with the absolute raw, gritty roots of underground street dance, proving to everyone that his foundation isn't built on manufactured agency training, but on the authentic blood, sweat, and tears culture of real hip-hop ciphers. He took that raw, unadulterated street energy, combined it with the terrifying discipline he honed as a military commander, and injected it directly into the veins of the 2026 BTS comeback, creating a visual spectacle that makes every other performance in the industry look like a clumsy high school talent show rehearsal. When you watch the new 2026 stadium tour, you aren't just watching a concert, you are witnessing a masterclass in kinetic storytelling, where J-Hope seamlessly directs dozens of backup dancers, massive pyrotechnics, and his own 6 brothers with a terrifying, unblinking intensity that completely shatters the illusion of effortless pop stardom. Behind the scenes, the stories are already becoming legendary within the industry. Tales of team leader Jeon pushing the members through grueling 14-hour marathon rehearsals, refusing to accept anything less than absolute microscopic perfection, dissecting every single angle, every single breath, and every single footfall until the choreography is permanently etched into their muscle memory. This is the staggering duality of Jungkook that the rest of K-pop simply cannot manufacture or replicate. He is the radiant, smiling sunshine who effortlessly charms millions in interviews and variety shows, but the absolute second the music music drops and he steps onto that stage, his eyes completely darken, his aura violently shifts, and he transforms into an intimidating, commanding stage god who demands absolute submission from the audience. How can any rookie group barely holding their breath through a 3-minute music show recording possibly hope to compete with a man who casually freestyles complex popping and locking routines during a 3-hour stadium show without missing a single vocal cue? They simply can't, because J-Hope has entirely redefined the metric for what constitutes a good performance in 2026, elevating it from mere synchronized movement to a deeply profound, exhausting expression of pure artistic dominance. He is actively burying the current industry standard by proving that you cannot shortcut the agonizing physical toll required to achieve true greatness, exposing the heavy reliance on clever camera angles and pre-recorded backing tracks that most companies use to hide their artists' glaring stage deficiencies. Furthermore, his deep, intrinsic understanding of how music and movement intertwine allows him to create moments of such breathtaking, agonizing tension on stage that it genuinely leaves the audience gasping for air, masterfully controlling the pacing of the entire concert with the flick of his wrist. He has brought an incredibly aggressive, almost dangerous edge to the group's choreography this year, incorporating explosive, gravity-defying acrobatics and intricate high-speed transitions that are scientifically impossible for anyone lacking his decade-plus of grueling, top-tier experience. Beyond just his physical dominance, we absolutely must talk about the sheer rhythmic brilliance of his rapping on this new album. He has evolved his unique, bouncing cadence into a razor-sharp, percussive weapon that effortlessly slices through the heavy bass lines, delivering lyrics that playfully mock the superficiality of the industry, while asserting his untouchable status as a global fashion icon and musical pioneer. His role as a global ambassador for luxury houses like Louis Vuitton wasn't just about wearing nice clothes. It was about observing the highest echelons of global art and design, and he has woven that high-fashion, avant-garde aesthetic directly into his 2026 stage presence, moving with a fluid, intoxicating swagger that makes every other male idol look incredibly stiff and manufactured by comparison. The K-pop industry is essentially watching their own funeral procession every time J-Hope hits the stage in 2026, realizing with sinking hearts that the bar hasn't just been raised, it has been completely blasted into the stratosphere, heavily fortified and locked away behind a level of insane dedication that they can never hope to achieve. He has turned the art of dancing into a weapon of mass industry destruction, completely obliterating the competition with every perfectly executed beat drop, every impossible body roll, and every piercing glare that dares anyone to challenge his throne. As the world watches in absolute awe, completely mesmerized by the sheer, unadulterated power of J-Hope, leading the biggest group on the planet through the most physically demanding, visually spectacular comeback in the history of music, leaving choreographers worldwide scratching their heads in disbelief and despair, a truly terrifying realization begins to dawn on the competitors. If this is the level of earth-shattering kinetic energy and militant precision the dance leader is violently bringing to the forefront, what kind of mesmerizing, gravity-defying, deeply intoxicating artistic poison is going to completely paralyze the industry when the group's contemporary swan and ultimate it-boy decides to finally unveil his own lethal masterpiece?
Number 3. Jimin, the Lethal Swan's intoxicating masterpiece unleashed. Did you honestly believe for a fraction of a second that Park Jimin, the undisputed, unparalleled it-boy of the global music industry, was going to return from his military service and simply blend into the heavily saturated, incredibly predictable background of modern K-pop? If you thought the man who literally made history as the very first South Korean solo artist to debut at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 with Like Crazy was
going to rest on his laurels, you are completely oblivious to the terrifyingly beautiful, venomous artistic evolution he has unleashed in 2026. While the current generation of idols are desperately flexing for the cameras with forced, aggressive facial expressions and rigid, heavily choreographed routines that look more like athletic drills than actual art, Jimin is entirely redefining the geometry of the human body on the 2026 stadium tour. He doesn't just dance to the music, he physically embodies the sound waves, moving with a fluid, intoxicating, and dangerous grace that genuinely looks like a contemporary swan violently tearing through the fabric of reality. Then there is the absolute devastating weapon that is his unique vocal tone. In an industry currently obsessed with heavily auto-tuned robotic vocal processing designed to mask the lack of individuality, Jimin's voice is a breathtaking, androgynous countertenor that cuts through the massive stadium speakers like a celestial blade. He seamlessly transitions from a breathy, agonizingly vulnerable whisper that makes 70,000 people lean in simultaneously to a soaring, crystal-clear high note that completely shatters the heavy, industrial bass lines of their new tracks. This isn't just about singing or dancing, it is about profound, emotional manipulation in the highest form of art. Jimin has always been the emotional lightning rod of BTS, the member who bears his soul so completely on stage that you can practically see his heart bleeding through his designer clothes. During his solo era with Face, he confronted his deepest, darkest insecurities, the suffocating isolation of the pandemic and the crushing weight of his own perfectionism, turning his raw psychological torment into a platinum-selling masterpiece. Now he has brought that devastatingly raw emotional honesty back into the group's dynamic, completely obliterating the manufactured, always happy facade that K-pop companies violently force upon their trainees. He is showing the world the profound beauty in human frailty, creating a magnetic, deeply intoxicating aura that is scientifically impossible to replicate in a corporate boardroom. Let's talk about his global influence outside of just the music, because you cannot discuss the 2026 takeover without acknowledging his absolute chokehold on the highest echelons of the luxury fashion world. As the global face of powerhouses like Dior and Tiffany & Co., Jimin isn't just wearing clothes, he is dictating global aesthetic trends, effortlessly blurring the rigid, archaic lines between masculinity and femininity to create a lethal, untouchable visual brand that makes every other idol look like they are merely playing dress-up. When he steps onto that massive stage in his custom-designed, avant-garde tour wardrobe, dripping in diamonds and staring down the camera lens with those cold, piercing, yet heartbreakingly expressive eyes, the entire global fashion and music industries collectively stop breathing. He has mastered the art of the Jimin effect, a scientifically proven phenomenon where anyone who watches him perform is instantly, irreversibly pulled into his gravitational orbit, completely forgetting every other artist they previously stand. You have to understand the sheer, agonizing frustration this causes for rival entertainment CEOs. They're pouring millions of dollars into manufacturing the next Jimin, desperately training their rookies to mimic his iconic hair flips, his subtle smirks, and his gravity-defying spins, only to realize with absolute crushing despair that true lethal magnetism is born, not built. You cannot teach a teenager how to command an audience of millions with a single trembling exhale. You cannot choreograph the microscopic, agonizingly beautiful adjustments he makes to his posture that convey decades of joy, pain, and absolute triumph. Let's rewind to the sheer insanity of Set Me Free Part 2 and Filter, where he first showcased his ability to seamlessly transition from an innocent, angelic figure into a terrifyingly intense, choir-backed maestro of chaos. He has taken that chaotic theatrical brilliance and amplified it 1,000 times over for the 2026 World Tour. Do you remember the stories from the Busan High School of Arts where he was a top student in the highly demanding modern dance department? He didn't just learn routines, he learned how to tell devastating stories using every single muscle fiber, every agonizing stretch of his limbs, and every subtle twitch of his fingertips. While other companies are busy hiring trendy choreographers to mask their idol's lack of fundamental rhythm, Jimin is fundamentally deconstructing the art form itself, proving that genuine stage presence comes from a deep, almost spiritual connection to the music. His duality is perhaps the most terrifying weapon in his arsenal. The way his voice can sound so incredibly fragile, like shattering glass, right before he drops into a powerful, soul-piercing belt that genuinely shakes the foundations of the stadium. It creates a psychological roller coaster for the audience, a deeply intimate parasocial experience that no algorithm or viral marketing campaign could ever dream of replicating. He has completely revolutionized what it means to be a global pop star, proving that you can be immensely powerful while remaining entirely vulnerable, completely shattering the archaic, toxic masculinity that has long plagued the industry. Furthermore, his time in the military, serving alongside Jungkook in one of the most physically demanding artillery units, hasn't hardened his artistic grace. It has instead forged an incredible underlying core of iron beneath his delicate swan-like exterior. He has returned with a terrifyingly grounded confidence, no longer the artist who constantly doubts his own perfection, but a fully realized, majestic king who knows exactly how lethal his artistry truly is. He is using his body as a weapon of mass seduction, perfectly contrasting the aggressive, militant energy of RM and J-Hope with a mesmerizing, liquid sensuality that completely paralyzes the competition. He has effectively forced the K-pop industry to look in the mirror and realize just how incredibly stiff, manufactured, and soulless they have become in the absence of true, unadulterated passion. Every single time he executes a flawless mid-air contemporary leap or delivers a heartbreaking vocal run that perfectly captures the collective trauma and triumph of the modern era, Jimin is quietly, elegantly, and absolutely ruthlessly burying the rest of the industry 6 feet under. As the world watches helplessly, completely intoxicated by the blinding, venomous radiance of his 2026 performances, a genuinely terrifying realization begins to dawn on the competitors who are currently choking on the dust of his flawless execution. If this is the level of profound, gravity-defying, deeply emotional seduction the group's contemporary mastermind is violently injecting into the comeback, what kind of absolute, undeniable, world-conquering vocal destruction is going to completely vaporize the industry when the group's fiercely soulful, unapologetically eccentric visual titan decides to finally unleash his own unique, baritone-laced masterpiece?
Number 2. V, the soulful baritone maverick, redefining cinematic dominance. Did you seriously think that Kim Tae-young, the man universally recognized as the most handsome face on the planet and the absolute embodiment of vintage, soulful eccentricity, was just going to slide back into the standard idol routine after serving in the Republic of Korea Army's elite special duty team? If you genuinely believe that, you are completely blind to the agonizingly brilliant cinematic metamorphosis that has taken place, because V's 2026 return is not just a musical comeback, it is a hostile, incredibly stylish takeover of the entire global entertainment industry. Let us brutally analyze the absolute whiplash this man has subjected the world to. Before his enlistment, he completely shattered the hyper-energetic, choreography-heavy expectations of K-pop with his breathtaking solo debut, Layover, deliberately slowing down the frantic pace of the industry to introduce a masterclass in hazy, R&B-infused jazz that sounded like a smoky 1970s underground club rather than a modern chart topper. He essentially looked at the current trend of high BPM, chaotic noise music that rookie groups are mass-producing and casually threw it out the window, proving that true, undeniable magnetism doesn't require aggressive beat drops. It only requires a voice dripping with honey and a gaze that can completely paralyze a camera lens. But then, in an absolute masterstroke of unpredictability that perfectly defines his chaotic genius, this soulful, jazz-loving romantic enlisted in the SDT, the military's anti-terrorism unit, donning the heavy black tactical gear and undergoing some of the most grueling, dangerous physical training imaginable. Do you understand the sheer psychological warfare this duality inflicts on the rest of the K-pop industry? How do rival companies even begin to manufacture a competitor against a man who can seamlessly transition from flawlessly executing high-stakes tactical military drills to elegantly crooning a jazz ballad in a custom-tailored Celine suit with a Cartier Panther draped around his neck? You absolutely cannot manufacture that kind of lethal, multifaceted aura. Now, in 2026, he has brought this terrifying, grounded intensity back into the core dynamic of BTS, completely revolutionizing their visual and sonic landscape. While the industry is currently saturated with boy groups desperately straining their vocal cords to hit impossibly high, heavily synthesized notes, Taeyong acts as the massive, unshakable gravitational anchor of the group with his rich, soulful, incredibly rare baritone voice. It is a deeply resonant, husky tone that wraps around the massive stadium speakers like thick velvet, providing a devastatingly sensual contrast to Jimin and Jin's high tenors and creating a vocal harmony so profoundly layered and complex that it makes every other group sound incredibly thin and two-dimensional. He has entirely weaponized his vocal uniqueness on this 2026 album, diving into deep, bluesy ad-libs and raspy, emotional growls that genuinely send shivers down the spines of 70,000 screaming fans simultaneously. But to fully comprehend the absolute destruction V is raining down upon the industry, you have to look at his unrivaled, chilling mastery of stage presence and micro-expressions. K-pop is currently suffering from an epidemic of over-dancing, where idols are so focused on perfectly executing complex synchronized routines that their faces look completely dead, robotic, and disconnected from the music. Taeyong, however, is a classically trained actor. Remember his heartbreaking scene-stealing debut in Hwarang, and he treats every single 3-minute performance not as a pop song, but as an Oscar-worthy, high-stakes cinematic thriller. He doesn't just hit the choreography marks, he tells an entire, devastating story with a single raise of his eyebrow, a fleeting, dangerous smirk, or a sudden, melancholic shift in his eyes that the massive stadium jumbotrons capture in agonizingly beautiful high definition. He has the terrifying ability to make every single person in a massive arena feel like he is looking directly, intimately into their soul, creating a deeply intoxicating parasocial chokehold that no amount of viral TikTok marketing can ever hope to achieve. This is the Taeyong effect, a lethal combination of his impossibly symmetrical CGV visuals and his deeply unpredictable eccentric charm that completely short-circuits the brains of critics and fans alike. During the 2026 comeback, he is effortlessly blurring the lines between a global pop idol and a mysterious avant-garde film star, bringing an incredibly vintage, timeless, and expensive aura to the group's concept that completely alienates the cheap, fast fashion aesthetic of their competitors. He refuses to conform to the rigid, heavily policed behavioral standards of the idol industry, casually breaking the fourth wall, playfully interacting with his members in the middle of intense choreography, and exuding an absolute, unbothered confidence that screams untouchable.
Rival CEOs are currently pulling their hair out because they realize that visual centers are born every day, but a Kim Tae-young, a man who inherently understands the devastating power of subtlety, who can dominate global fashion weeks just as easily as he dominates the Billboard charts, and who possesses the profound emotional depth of an old soul trapped in the body of a global superstar, is an absolute one-of-a-kind anomaly that only happens once in a millennium. He is proving that while you can teach a trainee to dance on beat and sing on pitch, you can never ever teach them the sheer, suffocating, undeniable charisma of a man who genuinely operates on a completely different, elevated frequency than the rest of humanity. Every time his deep, velvety baritone violently cuts through the track, and every time he delivers one of his signature soul-piercing glares that makes the entire world collectively gasp for air, Kim Tae-young is single-handedly burying the superficiality of modern K-pop, cementing BTS's status not just as musicians, but as untouchable cinematic legends. And as the industry completely drowns in the intoxicating jazzy undertow of his 2026 dominance, gasping for breath and desperately trying to find a way to break his hypnotic spell, a deeply terrifying ultimate realization begins to set in for the few survivors left standing. If this is the level of absolute baritone-laced cinematic destruction the visual maverick is effortlessly bringing to the stage, what kind of world-ending, unadulterated, pure pop perfection is going to finally eradicate the entire system when the group's undeniable golden maknae, the literal center of the universe, decides to unleash his ultimate final form?
Number 1. Jungkook, the Golden Emperor's final blow, obliterating the system. If you ever harbored even the slightest, most microscopic fraction of a doubt that Jungkook is the absolute, undisputed, untouchable center of the global music universe, his 2026 return has violently, permanently erased that foolish notion from the annals of history. Did you seriously believe that the man who completely hijacked the entire global pop industry with his solo album Golden, casually shattering Spotify records and standing shoulder to shoulder with Western pop titans as the ultimate main pop boy, was going to return to a group setting and simply tone down his world-conquering aura? If you did, you are completely ignoring the terrifying, awe-inspiring evolution of the Golden Maknae, a title that used to be a cute nickname but is now transformed into a deeply intimidating historical fact that keeps rival entertainment CEOs awake at night in cold sweats. Let us take a brutal, unflinching look at the sheer, undeniable reality of his trajectory. This is the boy who left his home in Busan at just 15 years old, practically raised by 6 incredibly demanding, visionary older brothers who poured every single ounce of their own talents, disciplines, and passions into his development. He absorbed RM's global perspective, Jin's vocal stability, Suga's relentless drive, J-Hope's terrifying stage discipline, Jimin's fluid sensuality, and V's cinematic charisma, effectively becoming a terrifying, genetically modified super soldier of pop music. But what he brought to the table in 2026 is entirely his own raw, unadulterated, earth-shattering power. While the current fifth-generation rookies are desperately relying on heavily pre-recorded tracks and lip-syncing scandals are plaguing the industry on a weekly basis, Jungkook is out there executing the most physically agonizing, bone-crushing choreography imaginable, while casually belting out flawless, crystal-clear high notes with the cardiovascular endurance of an Olympic marathon runner. We are talking about the man who served in the notoriously grueling 5th Infantry Division Artillery Unit alongside Jimin, enduring the harshest, most physically taxing conditions imaginable. And he didn't just survive it, he conquered it, returning with a heavily fortified, incredibly muscular physique and a hardened, unbreakable mental fortitude that completely obliterates the delicate, easily shattered image of the modern K-pop idol.
When he stands at the absolute center of the 2026 stadium tour stage, drenched in sweat, locking eyes with the camera lens with that signature, deeply intense, predatory gaze, the entire stadium goes into absolute deafening hysteria. He doesn't just perform the choreography, he devours it, moving with a hyperkinetic, explosive energy that genuinely channels the timeless, legendary aura of Michael Jackson, a comparison that global music critics are no longer whispering but actively screaming from the rooftops. You cannot manufacture the kind of breathless, undeniable magnetism that erupts when he launches into the final, explosive dance break of their new lead single, effortlessly carrying the entire vocal climax of the track on his shoulders without a single microscopic pitch correction. The K-pop industry is currently suffering from a severe crisis of identity, mass-producing idols who are merely good enough at everything, but truly exceptional at nothing, desperately throwing them at the algorithmic wall to see what sticks. Jungkook, however, is the absolute, undeniable antithesis of that mediocrity. He is a master of every single discipline he touches, possessing a vocal tone so incredibly versatile that it can seamlessly pivot from an agonizingly tender acoustic ballad that makes millions weep to a gritty, high-octane pop R&B anthem that dominates the Billboard Hot 100 for months on end. His solo success with tracks like Seven and Standing Next to You wasn't just a side quest, it was a brutal global demonstration of his sheer, unparalleled market dominance, proving that he doesn't even need the K-pop infrastructure to be the biggest artist in the world. He completely transcended the K-pop label, collaborating with global superstars and proving that his inherent pop sensibilities are literally second to none in the modern era. Yet, in an act of absolute devastating loyalty that completely shatters the ego-driven narratives of Western pop groups, where the breakout star almost always abandons the band to maintain their solo spotlight, he took all of that unprecedented global solo power and willfully, joyfully poured it right back into the lifeblood of BTS for this monumental 2026 reunion. This is exactly why the rest of the industry is currently being buried alive under the sheer weight of their legacy. Rival companies are utterly paralyzed because you cannot train, buy, or manufacture a Jungkook. You cannot artificially replicate the terrifying synergy of a prodigy who genuinely loves his 6 brothers more than his own blinding solo fame. A man who acts as the ultimate, unbreakable keystone, holding the massive, sprawling architecture of BTS together. He is the ultimate weapon, the final boss of the music industry, possessing a vocal agility that leaves Grammy-winning producers in a state of sheer disbelief, and a stage presence that genuinely feels like a gravitational anomaly that pulls every single eye in the stadium directly onto him. During this 2026 comeback, every time he hits that stage, he is systematically dismantling every single critique ever thrown at the group, proving with absolute, undeniable finality that they are not just a boy band, but a generational musical phenomenon that will never, ever be replicated. He has completely revolutionized the standard for the modern male pop star, setting the bar so astronomically high that it has effectively become invisible to the rest of the K-pop landscape. The sheer, overwhelming reality of his talent creates a suffocating vacuum for everyone else trying to climb the charts. How do you even begin to market your shiny new rookie group when the literal golden emperor of pop is standing dead center on a global stage, effortlessly executing triple pirouettes while hitting an E5 vocal run with a casual smile on his face? The answer is brutally simple. You don't. You step back, you bow down, and you watch in absolute terrified awe as Jungkook delivers the final, spectacular, world-ending blow to the entire system, cementing BTS's absolute, eternal
eternal dominance over the music industry and leaving a legacy so profoundly massive and untouchable that it will be studied by future generations for centuries to come. The era of manufactured competition is officially dead and buried, and Jungkook is holding the golden shovel, smiling brightly as he completely rewrites the history of music in 2026. So there you have it, the absolute, undeniable, and chillingly magnificent truth behind the greatest musical resurgence in the history of the modern entertainment industry. When you take a step back and look at the colossal, world-ending puzzle that BTS has masterfully assembled in this glorious year of 2026, the entire picture becomes almost too massive to comprehend. We are no longer just talking about a K-pop group making a highly anticipated comeback after fulfilling their mandatory military service. We are bearing witness to a once-in-a-millennium cultural phenomenon, a literal musical renaissance spearheaded by 7 individuals who somehow managed to completely shatter the ceiling of their own untouchable legacy. The industry fundamentally misunderstood the assignment. They saw the temporary hiatus as an opportunity, a brief window to push their shiny new rookies into the spotlight, heavily investing in aggressive marketing campaigns and superficial viral trends, hoping the world would simply move on and forget the kings who built the very throne they were trying to sit on. But how could anyone possibly forget the architects of the modern global music landscape? Every single agency, every single executive who furiously poured millions of dollars into manufacturing the next global sensation during their absence is now staring at a terrifying, unavoidable reality. You cannot artificially replicate the blood, sweat, and tears of 7 underdogs from a bankrupt company who fought their way up from the damp, claustrophobic basement studios of 2013 to the absolute pinnacle of global stadium dominance. What RM, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V, and Jungkook have orchestrated in 2026 is a masterclass in psychological and artistic warfare, proving that their individual solo eras weren't just side quests to pass the time. They were rigorous, calculated training arcs designed to forge each member into an unstoppable, self-sufficient titan of the industry. Now they have brought those 7 distinct, world-conquering domains back together, creating a synergistic explosion so profoundly massive that it is literally suffocating the competition. Think about the sheer agonizing pressure they must have felt, the collective anxiety of an entire nation resting squarely on their shoulders, the relentless, suffocating scrutiny of a global media landscape waiting for them to stumble, to show even a single microscopic crack in their armor. Yet instead of cracking under the immense weight of their own astronomical legend, they forged themselves into diamonds, returning with a heavily fortified, deeply mature, and terrifyingly self-aware album that doesn't just chase fleeting Billboard trends, but actively dictates the cultural zeitgeist for the rest of the decade. They have completely ripped up the traditional idol playbook, burning it to ashes and scattering it to the wind, unapologetically embracing their scars, their aging, their vulnerabilities, and their raw, unadulterated human experiences in a way that makes the manufactured, plastic perfection of their juniors look utterly ridiculous and hollow. This is exactly why the rest of K-pop is currently being buried alive. The standard has been violently ripped from their grasp and placed on a summit so impossibly high that no amount of viral TikTok marketing or algorithmic manipulation can ever hope to reach it. The emotional bond they share with ARMY has evolved from a simple artist-fan dynamic into an impenetrable, global ironclad alliance that practically moves markets, shifts political discourses, and redefines what loyalty looks like in the 21st century. Are we simply supposed to act normal when the biggest band in the universe casually proves that loyalty, brotherhood, and genuine artistic integrity can actually conquer a deeply cynical, fast-paced, and profit-driven industry?
How do you even begin to comprehend the magnitude of their 2026 world tour, a sprawling, cinematic, multi-continent epic that is actively crashing ticketing servers, paralyzing local economies, and transforming massive metropolitan cities into seas of vibrant, screaming purple? They are no longer just performing, they are hosting global summits of joy, unity, and profound emotional release for a fandom that waited in agonizing yet fiercely loyal silence for this exact world-shattering moment. The beautiful, terrifying reality is that BTS didn't just survive the military, they utilized it, matured through it, and weaponized the discipline and longing it created to deliver an artistic statement so universally potent that it transcends language, borders, and musical genres altogether. Every single member returned not as a fragmented piece of a boy band, but as a fully realized, incredibly dangerous artistic weapon, combining their forces to form an impenetrable phalanx of pure, unadulterated musical genius. So, as the dust finally begins to settle on this apocalyptic, industry-resetting comeback, and the rest of the entertainment world desperately scrambles to pick up the shattered pieces of their obsolete business models, we are left to ponder a deeply profound, almost existential set of questions. If this is what happens when 7 legends return to merely reclaim their throne, what kind of unimaginable, universe-altering frontiers are they going to conquer next? Can the fragile fabric of the music industry even withstand the continuous, unrelenting gravitational pull of the Bangtan Boys in their absolute, fully realized prime? As you sit there, completely breathless, trying to process the sheer magnitude of the historical event unfolding before your very eyes, remember this: you are incredibly lucky to be alive in the era where 7 ordinary boys from South Korea decided to conquer the world, rewrite the history books, and prove once and for all that true, undeniable greatness is completely immortal. This has been your deep dive into the monumental 2026 takeover, a stark, breathtaking reminder that the Kings never truly left. They were just waiting for the perfect, calculated moment to remind every single living soul exactly who paved the way, forever burying the competition under the sheer, undeniable weight of their golden legacy.